What if I told you that the most powerful fat-burning window in your entire day is not happening at the gym, not during your morning run, and not while you are tracking your macros? It is happening while you are completely unconscious, and almost everyone is unknowingly shutting it down before they even close their eyes. Tonight, that changes. Here is what nobody in the fitness world wants to admit. You can wake up early, train hard, eat clean, and count every single calorie and still watch the scale refuse to move. Not because you are lazy, not because your metabolism is broken, but because there is one specific hormonal window happening every single night inside your body, and most people are accidentally blocking it with a habit so ordinary, so automatic, they do not even register it as a problem. Today I am going to explain exactly what that window is, why visceral fat, the dangerous fat that wraps around your internal organs, responds to it so powerfully, and the one simple thing you can fix tonight to finally let your body do what it was already designed to do. Stay with me until the end, because the last thing I share is what most people are doing every single night, without realizing the hormonal damage it is causing. And once you hear it, you will not be able to unsee it. Section 1. The hidden fat-burning shift your body runs every night. Let us start with something most people have never been told. Your body runs a metabolic shift every single night. During deep sleep, your body enters a state of repair, restoration, and, critically, fat utilization. It is not a myth. It is not a supplement company's marketing claim. It is basic human physiology, backed by decades of endocrinological research. The key player in this process is growth hormone. You have likely heard of it, but most people associate it with athletes or anti-aging clinics. What they do not realize is that the largest natural pulses of growth hormone your body produces happen during deep sleep, specifically in the first few hours after you fall asleep. Growth hormone does several important things during this window. It drives cellular repair, supports lean muscle maintenance, and most relevant to this conversation, it actively promotes the breakdown of stored fat for energy, including visceral fat, the type that accumulates deep in the abdominal cavity around your liver, pancreas, and intestines. Here is where it gets critical. Growth hormone cannot do its job effectively when one other hormone is elevated at the same time, and that hormone is insulin. Most people have a general understanding of insulin. It manages blood sugar. It is released when you eat. That much is widely known. What is far less understood is what happens when insulin remains elevated going into sleep. When insulin is high, your body is in storage mode. It is actively shuttling nutrients into cells and holding onto fat reserves. Growth hormone and elevated insulin do not cooperate. When insulin is dominant, the fat-burning shift gets suppressed, sometimes significantly. This is not a minor effect. This is the difference between your body spending 6 to 8 hours burning stored fat while you sleep, or spending those same hours storing energy instead. Same sleep duration, completely different metabolic outcome, and the variable controlling which one happens is something you decide before you go to bed. Here is something that stops most people cold when they hear it for the first time. According to research in endocrinology, even a modest late-night snack containing 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrates can suppress the first major growth hormone pulse of the night by up to 70%. Not reduce it slightly, suppress it by 70%. That is the person eating what they think is a small, harmless snack before bed, unknowingly dismantling the most productive fat-burning period of their entire day. Section 2. Why visceral fat specifically responds to this window. Not all fat behaves the same way. The subcutaneous fat you can pinch under your skin is metabolically different from visceral fat. Visceral fat is biologically active. It produces inflammatory compounds. It interferes with insulin signaling. It elevates cardiovascular risk. And it is stubbornly resistant to conventional calorie cutting in ways that frustrate people who are doing everything else correctly. But here is what makes visceral fat uniquely sensitive to this nighttime window. Visceral fat cells have a high density of receptors that respond to growth hormone. When growth hormone rises and insulin is low, visceral fat is preferentially targeted for breakdown. Your body essentially prioritizes it. This is why people who optimize their nighttime hormonal environment often notice their waistline responding before the overall scale number changes dramatically. The visceral fat begins to reduce. The abdomen flattens. Inflammation markers improve. And all of this is happening while they are asleep. Most people spend years trying to target belly fat with crunches and calorie restriction and feel nothing happening. The reason is not effort. The reason is that visceral fat responds most powerfully to hormonal signals, specifically the growth hormone and insulin relationship. And that relationship is determined almost entirely by what happens in the final hours before sleep. Before I move on, I want to ask you something directly. Think about last night. What was the last thing you consumed before you went to bed, and what time was it? Hold that answer in your mind. By the time I finish this next section, you will understand exactly what that choice did inside your body while you slept. Section 3. The late night eating pattern most people do not recognize as a problem. This is where I want to introduce you to someone. Call her Sarah. Sarah is 4 years old. Reasonably active, eats what most people would consider a healthy diet during the day. She does not binge eat. She does not drink soda. She makes good choices at breakfast and lunch. She even meal preps on Sundays. But every evening, the pattern begins. Dinner around 7:30. A handful of almonds around 9 because almonds are healthy. A small glass of wine to decompress. A protein bar around 10 because she read that protein before bed supports muscle. A couple of bites of peanut butter directly from the jar. And then she wonders why, despite everything she is doing right, her midsection has not changed in 2 years. None of those individual choices looks alarming. That is exactly the problem. Each item, viewed in isolation, is defensible. Together, they form a continuous insulin response that carries well past midnight. Sarah is not failing at fat loss because of her 7 a.m. habits. She is failing at fat loss because of her 10 p.m. habits. And she has never once connected the two. Doctors see this pattern constantly. The person who is disciplined and frustrated in equal measure, doing the visible work during the day, and unknowingly undoing the invisible work their body is trying to do at night. Section 4. The 3R insulin quiet zone and how to use it. The solution is straightforward, immediately actionable, and costs nothing. It requires no new supplement, no special diet plan, and no additional exercise. Create what I call a 3R insulin quiet zone before sleep. The concept is simple. Finish your final calorie-containing meal at least 3 hours before you plan to go to bed. If your target sleep time is 10:30 at night, your last meal should be completed by 7:30 at the latest. After that, no snacks, no bites, no liquid calories. Water is completely fine. Plain herbal tea with no sweetener is fine. Everything else introduces calories and triggers an insulin response. When you stop eating, insulin naturally begins to decline over the following hours. As it falls, your body gradually transitions into a more fat-friendly metabolic state. By the time you enter deep sleep, insulin is low enough that when growth hormone pulses, it can do its work without interference. The overnight fat-burning shift activates the way it was designed to. You are not adding effort to your day. You are removing interference from your night. That distinction matters enormously, because most fat loss advice is about doing more. This is about doing less at the right time. The composition of your final meal also matters. Prioritize a solid protein source, moderate healthy fats, and minimize fast-digesting carbohydrates late in the evening. This does not mean eliminating carbohydrates from your life. It means being deliberate about when you consume them. A meal that is high in refined carbohydrates at 9 at night produces a prolonged insulin response. A meal centered on protein and healthy fats produces a much shorter one. The same total calories, dramatically different hormonal outcome going into sleep. Here is something worth pausing on. In clinical settings, patients who implement intermittent approaches to eating often report that their sleep quality improves noticeably within the first week. This is not coincidental. When digestion is not active during sleep, the body allocates more resources to the repair and recovery processes that deep sleep is designed to facilitate. Better sleep quality means stronger growth hormone pulses. Stronger growth hormone pulses mean more effective fat utilization overnight. It is a compounding effect that builds on itself. Section 5. The sleep quality factor most people completely miss here is where things get serious. Because even if you implement the 3R quiet zone perfectly, there is a second variable that determines how effective your overnight fat-burning shift actually is: the depth and quality of your sleep. Growth hormone is not released evenly throughout the night. It is released in pulses, and the strongest pulse occurs during the first cycle of deep, slow-wave sleep. If your sleep is fragmented, shallow, or delayed, that first critical pulse is weakened or missed entirely. You could be eating at exactly the right time and still not capturing the full benefits simply because your sleep architecture is disrupted. This is why the habits surrounding sleep itself matter as much as eating timing. A short 10 to 15-minute walk after your final meal helps regulate post-meal blood sugar and supports a faster decline in insulin before sleep. Magnesium, a mineral that a significant percentage of adults are quietly deficient in, supports muscular relaxation and has been shown in research to improve sleep depth and duration. Lowering your bedroom temperature slightly, somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, encourages the body temperature drop that facilitates deeper sleep cycles. And reducing screen exposure in the hour before bed supports natural melatonin production, the hormone that signals to your body that it is time to transition into restorative sleep. None of these are difficult. None of them require disrupting your life. Together, they create a sleep environment where your body can execute the overnight metabolic shift at maximum efficiency. You are not forcing anything. You are simply removing the obstacles. Most people are shocked when they realize how much of their fat loss result is determined not by what they did at the gym that morning, but by what their bedroom environment looked like the night before. And this next point is the one almost no one is addressing. Section 6, the stress and cortisol connection that blocks everything. There is one more hormone in this conversation that does not get nearly enough attention. Cortisol. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It is entirely necessary in the right context. In the morning, a natural cortisol rise is what wakes you up and prepares you for the day. That is healthy and normal. The problem is what happens when cortisol remains elevated in the evening. Chronic stress, overstimulation from news and social media, anxious thinking, and even late-night high-intensity exercise can all keep cortisol elevated when it should be declining. Elevated evening cortisol delays melatonin production. It suppresses growth hormone release, and directly it signals your body to hold onto visceral fat, particularly around the abdominal region. Cortisol and visceral fat have a well-documented relationship in the research literature. Chronically elevated cortisol is one of the most reliable predictors of abdominal fat accumulation, independent of diet and exercise. This is why the wind-down period before bed is not a luxury. It is a physiological requirement for fat loss. The hour before sleep should be genuinely calm. No intense news consumption. No heated conversations. No scrolling through content designed to provoke emotional reaction. Your nervous system needs to transition from a sympathetic, high-alert state into a parasympathetic, rest and restore state. That transition is what allows cortisol to drop, melatonin to rise, and growth hormone to pulse effectively during deep sleep. Think of your evening wind down not as relaxation for its own sake, but as hormonal preparation. You are setting the conditions for your body's overnight metabolic work. Section 7. What happens when you put this all together? Let me bring this back to something concrete. When you combine the 3R insulin quiet zone with improved sleep quality and a genuine cortisol wind down before bed, you are creating a hormonal environment that your body has likely not experienced in years, possibly decades. Insulin is low going into sleep. Cortisol is declining. Melatonin rises on schedule. You enter deep sleep efficiently. Growth hormone pulses strongly and without interference. Your body targets stored fat, including visceral fat, for energy throughout the night. You wake up the next morning with lower morning blood sugar, reduced bloating, and over time, a measurable reduction in abdominal circumference. People who implement this consistently often report noticing something shift within 2 weeks. Not because it is magic, because they were unknowingly blocking this process every single night for years. And when they simply stopped interfering, their body responded the way it was always capable of responding. Sarah, the person I described earlier, made 3 changes. She moved her final meal to 7:15. She stopped the evening snacking habit entirely. And she committed to 30 minutes of genuinely calm wind down before sleep. Within 3 weeks, her waist measurement had dropped. Within 6 weeks, her morning energy was noticeably better. She did not add a single extra workout. She did not reduce her daily calorie intake. She simply stopped disrupting the process her body was already designed to run. So here is your action for tonight. Decide what time you are going to bed. Count back 3 hours. That is when you finish eating. Make your final meal protein-centered and satisfying. After that, water only. Dim the lights an hour before sleep. Put the screen away. Let your nervous system settle, then sleep and let your body do the rest. Which part of this surprised you most? Was it the growth hormone connection, the cortisol piece, or the late-night snacking pattern you recognized in yourself? Tell me in the comments, and tell me where in the world you are watching from. I read every single one. If this gave you something real to take away, press the like button and subscribe for new science-backed health content every week. Do not ignore this if you genuinely care about where your health is headed.